own stepmother when she sent me a photo from our bedroom. 3 days later, I printed it huge and placed it in the living room before his family came for dinner. When he walked in and froze, I smiled and said, "Welcome home." Tonight, everyone learns the truth. I found out my husband was sleeping with his stepmother at 6:13 in the morning, before my coffee finished brewing, before the birds outside had decided whether or not to bother. She sent the photo herself. That was her first mistake. Her only one, really. Because everything after that wasn't a mistake at all. It was a choice. And choices, I've learned in 14 years as a forensic financial investigator, leave tracks. The photo came through on a number I didn't recognize. No name, no preamble, just the image. And underneath it, 7 words typed in lowercase like she was bored. Poor little wife. Some women are born to be chosen. I stood at the kitchen counter in my bathrobe and socks, and I looked at that photo for a very long time. My husband Daniel's profile, his shoulder, the Egyptian cotton sheets I'd bought on sale at Bloomingdale's after saving for 3 months, the wedding portrait hanging crooked on the wall behind them, me in ivory silk, him in his rented tux, both of us smiling like we meant it. Vanessa's face turned toward the camera, eyes half open, smiling. She had taken that photo herself, sent it herself. She wanted me to see. I set my phone face down on the counter. I poured my coffee. I sat down at the kitchen table, wrapped both hands around the mug, and I let myself feel every single thing for exactly 4 minutes. I know it was 4 minutes because I watched the clock on the microwave. The second hand swept around twice. I let the rage come, the hot, nauseating kind that starts in your chest and moves into your hands. I let the grief hum too, the humiliation, the disbelief. Then I picked up my phone, opened my work email, and forwarded the photo to my attorney, Margaret Cho of Cho & Associates, with a single subject line, "Evidence preservation, please advise." Then I went upstairs to shower. By the time Daniel came downstairs 20 minutes later, his hair still damp, wearing the watch I'd bought him for our 5th anniversary, a Tag Heuer that had taken me 4 months to save for. I was standing at the stove scrambling eggs I didn't intend to eat. "Bad dreams?" he asked. I turned my phone face down on the counter. Something like that. He kissed my cheek, poured himself coffee from my pot, walked out the door at 7:02 a.m., not knowing, not even curious enough to ask follow-up questions. That was fine. He had no idea what I did for a living. To Daniel's family, I was the boring accountant wife, the placeholder, temporary. That was the word his sisters used. I'd heard them through the kitchen door at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. She's temporary, she just doesn't know it yet. I was quiet. I dressed practically. I drove a 2019 Honda CR-V with a cracked rear bumper I kept forgetting to fix. I never wore designer labels, never joined Vanessa's book club, never commented on Richard Hale's long quarterly speeches about business and legacy and the importance of good stock. I let them underestimate me completely, deliberately. What I was, quietly, behind a desk on the 14th floor of a building downtown that none of them had ever visited, was a forensic financial investigator with 14 years of experience, 3 federal certifications, a published case study in the Journal of Financial Crime, and a particular gift for finding money that people were very sure they had hidden. My name is Claire Hale, née Ortega, and I am, professionally speaking, the last person on earth you want looking into your accounts. Let me tell you how I got here. I met Daniel Hale at 31, at a charity gala I'd been dragged to by a college friend. He was charming in the way that men who've never been told no tend to be. Easy smile, easy laugh, a talent for making whoever he was talking to feel briefly, temporarily, like the only person in the room. He was handsome. He was funny. He had plans. He always had plans. The restaurant was the current plan. Halo, a Mediterranean concept he was this close to launching when we met. He needed investors. He needed a location. He needed, as it turned out, a wife with a steady income and excellent credit, though I didn't understand that part until much later. I'm not saying I was naive. I'm saying I was hopeful. There's a difference, even if the outcomes look the same from the outside. His father, Richard Hale, was old money, or old enough money that the distinction barely mattered. He'd made his fortune in commercial real estate in the 90s, lost a chunk of it in 2008, rebuilt it slowly through a charitable foundation that I would later discover was not entirely charitable. Richard's first wife, Daniel's mother, had died when Daniel was 12. Richard had remarried 6 years ago. Vanessa, 22 years Richard's junior, former event planner, ash blonde, impeccably maintained, with the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes unless she was winning something. She had taken to Richard's family like a general taking a hill, systematically with casualties. When I entered the picture, Vanessa had already successfully managed the exits of 2 of Richard's closest friends, his longtime financial advisor and his daughter from a brief second relationship in the mid-90s, a half-sister Daniel referred to only as that situation. By the time Daniel brought me home for the first Thanksgiving, Vanessa had been firmly established as the Hale family matriarch, with Richard's full, adoring, oblivious support. She disliked me from the moment we shook hands. I think now that she recognized something. A stillness, maybe. The particular quiet of a person who doesn't need to announce themselves. Whatever it was, she smiled at me with every tooth she had and began finding small ways to erase me from the room. The comments were always gentle, always deniable. "Claire, did you get a haircut? Oh, you didn't. Daniel works so hard. He needs someone who can keep up, don't you think? This chicken is lovely, Claire. So practical." I smiled. I passed the bread. I made mental notes. Daniel's sisters, Tara and Beth, orbited Vanessa like small moons. They repeated her assessments with slight variations, the way people do when they're auditioning for belonging. They called me the the accountant. They called Vanessa, basically mom. They called me temporary when they thought I couldn't hear. 5 years. I stayed married to Daniel for 5 years, and in those 5 years I paid the majority of our household expenses, co-signed the loan for his restaurant, absorbed 2 of his business failures before Halo finally opened, and quietly, methodically paid down the debt his investors had somehow saddled him with. I did this because I believed in the marriage. Or I believed I did. I wonder now how long Vanessa and Daniel had been sleeping together before she sent me that photo. I don't actually want to know. Some math I choose not to do. Here's what 18 months of forensic investigation looks like, compressed into a Tuesday afternoon. I arrived at my office at 8:47 a.m. on the morning of the photo. My colleague, senior investigator Tom Reyes, 15 years in the field, former IRS criminal investigation agent, was already at his desk. I didn't tell him anything personal. I didn't need to. I need to pull something from the Meridian Ventures file, I said. The vendor audit, specifically the Coastal Consulting thread. He didn't look up from his screen. Third drawer. I'd been assigned to the Meridian Ventures audit 8 months earlier through a referral, a routine financial review of a private equity fund that had flagged irregularities in its charitable giving arm. Standard work. The kind of thing that takes months and produces thick binders and usually ends with a strongly worded letter and a corrective action plan. Except, Coastal Consulting, one of the vendors receiving payments from Meridian's charitable arm, had registered paperwork with a familiar name. Vanessa Hale's cousin, Marcus Webb. I'd noticed it 3 months earlier, flagged it internally, and moved on, because at the time it was simply a data point, a coincidence to watch. By 9:15 that morning, I had the complete thread open on my screen. $480,000 funneled over 18 months through 3 fake consulting companies, all registered to Marcus Webb, all paid from Richard Hale's foundation, which, as it happened, was the charitable arm of Meridian Ventures. The payments were structured to fall just below the thresholds that would trigger automatic audits. They were clever, not clever enough, but here's the part that made my hands stop shaking and go very, very still. Among the loan documents for Daniel's restaurant, documents I had co-signed in good faith 3 years ago, were 2 pages I had never seen. 2 pages with my signature on them. My signature. Not forged, exactly. Reproduced. Lifted digitally from another document and inserted with skill, but not with enough skill to survive a forensic document examination. Daniel had taken out an additional $200,000 loan against the restaurant, against my signature, without my knowledge. I sat back in my chair. I thought about the watch, the Tag Heuer, 4 months of saving. Then I picked up my phone and called Margaret Cho. Margaret Cho has been practicing family and financial law for 23 years. She is 5'2", perpetually dressed in charcoal gray, and possesses the particular energy of someone who has seen everything and been surprised by nothing since approximately 1998. She is also, I should mention, the attorney I had quietly retained 6 weeks earlier, the first time I'd found Marcus Webb's name in the Coastal Consulting file, and felt a cold thing move through me that I didn't yet have words for. I had hoped I was wrong. I often hope I'm wrong. I am rarely wrong. She listened to everything I told her. Then she said, "Send me the photo. Already in your inbox. The metadata? Attached. How quickly can you get me the full Coastal Consulting documentation? End of day. Good." A pause. "Claire, are you all right?" I looked out my office window at the parking garage across the street. A pigeon was sitting on the top level, not doing anything in particular. "I will be," I said. She had the preservation notice filed and served by noon. The photograph, time-stamped, metadata intact, source number traced to a prepaid phone purchased at a Walgreens in the Hale family's zip code 3 weeks earlier, was officially Exhibit A. By 2 o'clock, I had turned over the full Coastal Consulting file to both Margaret and to my colleague Tom Reyes, who, upon reviewing it, immediately escalated it to our firm's senior partner and notified the relevant federal contacts. That's the part that tends to move fastest. Federal financial crimes have a particular urgency. By 3, Tom was on the phone with a contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. By 4, that contact, Special Agent Dana Whitfield, 12 years in financial crimes, former CPA, had confirmed that the Coastal Consulting irregularities would be referred for a full investigation. She would later tell me, in a conversation I've replayed many times, "Ms. Ortega, I want you to know, this wasn't carelessness on your part. This was a very deliberate, very patient theft. You found it." I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 10 minutes, and I let my hands shake as much as they needed to. Then I drove to a print shop on Jefferson Street and placed an order, a 6-foot print, on foam core backing, in full color. The print shop employee, a young man named Kyle with gauge earrings and a patient face, confirmed the resolution was sufficient. He didn't ask questions. It cost $213. It would be ready by Thursday. I drove home. I made dinner. I sat across from Daniel at our kitchen table and watched him talk about the restaurant, about a supplier issue, about how he might need to adjust the Prix Fix menu for fall. I nodded. I asked follow-up questions. I ate my pasta. He had no idea. After dinner, I went upstairs to my office, closed the door, and began drafting the documentation package I would present on Saturday. Margaret had the divorce filing ready by Friday morning. 18-month infidelity, fraudulent use of my signature, commingled marital assets used in criminal enterprise. The filing included the infidelity clause, which, per our prenuptial agreement, a document Daniel had signed 5 years ago without reading it carefully enough, meant he would would forfeit spousal support, my business assets, and all residence rights. All residence rights. Because the house we had lived in together for 4 years, the house with the Egyptian cotton sheets and the wedding portrait and the kitchen where I'd made his coffee every morning, was mine. Purchased before the marriage with inheritance from my grandmother. In my name only. Always. He had known this when we married. I don't think he'd ever really believed it. I picked up the print on Thursday afternoon. Kyle helped me carry it to my car. That evening, Daniel called from the restaurant. "We're having dinner Saturday," he said. "Family dinner. I need you to make that roast chicken Dad likes." A pause. "Don't embarrass me. And make sure Vanessa sits next to Dad. She's been stressed." I looked at the foam core backing leaning against the wall in my dining room, covered in a black cloth I'd bought at a fabric store on Wednesday. "Of course," I said. "The thing about people who have always underestimated you is that they never notice when you stop being quiet. They don't notice the change because they stopped paying attention a long time ago. They filled in the blank where you were with whatever was useful. The boring accountant wife, the temporary inconvenience, the woman who would eventually understand that she was never the point. And they forgot to keep checking whether the blank was still blank." It was Saturday. The house smelled like roast chicken and lemon potatoes. The table was set with the good china I had also owned before this marriage. The covered frame hung on the dining room wall between the built-in bookshelves, where Daniel's golf trophies used to be before I'd moved them to the garage 3 days ago, quietly, to make room. My attorney, Margaret Cho, was in my kitchen. She had driven herself. She wore charcoal gray. She drank a cup of tea and did not seem nervous at all, which helped me not seem nervous either. Vanessa arrived first. She swept in draped in Richard's money. Cream cashmere sweater, diamond studs, the specific confidence of a woman who'd been winning for long enough to stop checking the scoreboard. She kissed the air beside my cheek. She smelled like something expensive. "Still living like a catalog, Claire," she said, looking around the dining room with the practiced dissatisfaction of a woman performing an inspection. "So neat, so lifeless." Her eyes caught the covered frame. "What's that?" "A surprise," I said. She laughed, a light dismissive sound. "Surprises never flatter desperate women." I smiled. "No, they don't." Richard came next, loud, handsome in an aging way, red-faced with the pleasure of a man who has always been welcome. He clapped me on the shoulder the way you'd clap a family dog. Tara and Beth arrived together, whispering behind their hands, gravitating immediately toward Vanessa like she was the warmth in the room. I served wine. I served bread. I answered questions about work with the kind of vague pleasantness that lets people fill in whatever they like. Boring accountant, no need to pay attention, and I watched the clock. 40 minutes. 50. Daniel arrived at 7:22 p.m. He walked in from the garage entrance, kissed Vanessa on the cheek first. I watched this from across the room, very calmly, the way you watch something you already know is true, then came to kiss me. He smelled expensive. He was in a good mood. Then he saw the covered frame. His smile didn't fall. It didn't do anything dramatic. It just stopped, the way a clock stops. 1 second it's ticking, and the next it simply isn't, and the silence is louder than the sound was. "What is that?" he asked quietly. "The centerpiece," I said. He looked at Vanessa across the room. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. A private language right there in my dining room, 3 feet from me. "Let's eat," I said. I let them eat. I let Richard lecture me about whether I was giving Daniel enough support in his vision phase, Richard's term for Daniel's pattern of expensive failures, and nod thoughtfully while I passed the potatoes. I let Tara tell a story about a friend's dull wedding that was clearly about my wedding. I let Beth ask whether we were thinking about children yet, with the specific tone of a woman who considers the question a kindness. I let Vanessa touch Daniel's wrist under the table. She thought I didn't see. I see everything. It is, professionally speaking, my entire skill set. Richard raised his glass at some point, mid-meal, the way he always did, requiring attention, requiring acknowledgement, filling the room with the assumption of his own importance. "To family," he said. "Loyalty above all." Vanessa almost choked laughing. I lifted my glass. I said nothing. Then Richard leaned back in his chair and set down his fork with the satisfaction of a man about to deliver a verdict. "Claire," he said, "I've been meaning to ask, when are you going to stop holding Daniel back?" The table quieted slightly. The pleasant kind of quiet that precedes the entertainment. Daniel smirked. The smallest smirk, reflexive, comfortable. The smirk of a man who has never once considered that the power in the room might not be his. Vanessa lifted her wine glass and smiled at me over the rim. "Some wives," she said, "are just anchors." I set my napkin on the table. "Interesting word," I said. The table went quiet. A different quiet this time. Daniel sighed. "Don't start, Claire." "I won't," I said. I stood. "I'll finish." I walked to the covered frame. No one spoke. I could hear Richard's breathing. I could hear the ice settle in Tara's water glass. I could hear Vanessa set her wine down. The small, precise clink of crystal on linen, like a punctuation mark. I took hold of the black cloth and I pulled it down. 6 feet, full color, under the chandelier light, with its face turned toward the dinner table. My bed, my sheets, my wedding portrait, crooked on the wall in the background, Daniel's profile. Vanessa's face turned toward the camera, toward whoever she had been when she'd taken that photo and sent it to me at 6:13 in the morning with 7 words underneath. For a moment, the room simply stopped. Vanessa's wine glass hit the floor. I heard it before I saw it. The sharp, small explosion of crystal against hardwood. Beth made a sound. Tara said nothing. Richard shot to his feet so fast his chair scraped back and caught on the rug. "What the hell? A photograph," I said. "Sent to me at 6:13 in the morning, last Sunday, by your wife." I picked up the remote control I'd left on the sideboard. The television mounted on the adjacent wall blinked to life. On the screen, the photo. photo. Timestamped. The metadata panel from the forensic examination. File creation time, device signature, geolocation data placing the photo inside this house. The message thread. The prepaid phone, traced and documented. My attorney's preservation notice. Filed Monday at 11:47 a.m. A banner across the bottom of the slide. Forensic authentication complete. Margaret Cho and Associates. Authenticated, I said. Every pixel. Daniel had gone white. The particular white of a man watching a structure collapse, slowly enough to understand what's happening, too fast to stop it. I clicked the remote again. A new slide. A spreadsheet. Color-coded, annotated, with a brief summary paragraph at the top. Coastal consulting vendor irregularities. Summary of findings. 18 months, I said. $480,000. Funneled through 3 fake consulting companies registered to Marcus Webb, Vanessa's cousin. All paid from Richard Hale's charitable foundation, which is the charitable arm of Meridian Ventures, whose books I have been auditing for the past 8 months. The sound Richard Hale made was not a word. It was something that had been a word but couldn't finish becoming one. She was careless, I said. I looked at Vanessa. You hired Marcus because you trusted him, but he filed the paperwork himself, and paperwork is forever. Vanessa grabbed Richard's arm. Her fingers were white on his sleeve. She's lying, she said. She's jealous. She's been threatened by me from the beginning. I clicked the remote one more time. Loan documents, 2 pages, blown up large enough to read across the room. My signature, at the bottom, my name, Claire Marie Ortega Hale, on a $200,000 secondary loan against the restaurant. A loan I had never signed for. Forensic document examination, I said. Completed Thursday. My signature was digitally reproduced from a prior document and inserted into a new loan application. The bank was provided this documentation this morning. I watched Daniel's face go through several things in rapid succession. Denial, calculation, the specific panic of a man realizing that the exits have already been closed. He finally looked at me. Really looked, the way he hadn't looked in years. Like he was seeing a person instead of furniture. My attorney walked out from the kitchen door. Margaret Cho, charcoal gray, calm as climate. Mr. Hale, she said, addressing Daniel with the pleasant, flat precision of someone delivering a weather forecast. Your wife has filed for divorce on grounds of infidelity with the supporting documentation you've just reviewed. Per the terms of your prenuptial agreement, executed October 14th, 5 years ago, the infidelity clause triggers forfeiture of spousal support, your wife's business assets held prior to the marriage, and all residence rights to the property at this address. Daniel laughed. It was broken, a wrong sound coming from the wrong part of him. Residence rights? This is our house. I met his eyes. No, I said. It's mine. It was always mine. The security guard I had arranged, Mike Ferreira, private firm, former San Diego PD, stepped out from the hallway near the front door and moved toward the entrance. Tara put her hand over her mouth. Beth was very still. Richard Hale sat back down in his chair, not gracefully, the way things fall. Vanessa looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at me. Then Richard's voice came through the room, low and rough, like something scraped out of the floor. Vanessa, just her name, nothing else. She let go of his arm. The rest of that evening is, legally speaking, ongoing, and some of it I'm not at liberty to discuss in detail. What I can tell you is this. Daniel left the house that night with a single bag of clothes and the watch I'd bought him for our anniversary. He did not contest the divorce filing. There was, I think, a calculation in that, an understanding that contesting it would mean discovery proceedings, and discovery proceedings would mean more documentation, and there was apparently quite a lot of documentation he preferred not to have entered into the public record. The fraudulent signature matter, the $200,000 loan, is a separate criminal proceeding. I have been told by the relevant parties that I should expect resolution within the next 18 months. I have also been told I will likely see most of the money. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not holding it either. The Coastal Consulting investigation, the $480,000 funneled from Richard's foundation through Vanessa's cousin, was referred to federal authorities 3 business days after that Saturday dinner. Special Agent Dana Whitfield called me personally on a Tuesday morning to confirm the referral had been accepted. She was professional and precise, and at the very end of the call, she said quietly, "Good work, Ms. Ortega," and I had to sit in my car for 10 minutes again. Richard Hale is cooperating with the federal investigation. I'm told his attorney characterized his cooperation as full. Whether this is out of shame or calculation, or a genuine reckoning with what Vanessa had done to him, to his money, to his foundation, to his legacy, I genuinely don't know. I found myself, briefly, feeling something close to pity for him. He was loud and proud and oblivious, and she had used all 3 of those things against him so completely that he hadn't seen any of it coming. But then I remembered the phone call. Don't embarrass me tonight. Make sure Vanessa sits next to Dad. I remembered 5 years of Thanksgiving, 5 years of temporary, 5 years of Daniel walking out the door in the morning in a watch I'd saved 4 months for. The pity passed. 3 months later, the house is quieter now, which I thought I would hate and don't. I've put the wedding portrait in the garage, next to the golf trophies. Not out of sentimentality. I just haven't gotten around to dealing with it yet. I fixed the bumper on the CRV. I bought new sheets, plain white, nothing special, and I don't think about the old ones at all. Daniel's restaurant is still open. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he'd brought in a new business partner and was doing all right. I don't know if that's true, and I find that I care very little either way. Vanessa, last I heard, was staying with Marcus Webb while Richard's attorney processed the separation. Marcus Webb's consulting companies have been dissolved by order of the court. His professional professional license, he was a licensed business consultant, briefly, technically, has been suspended pending the outcome of the federal case. Tara sent me a text, 6 weeks after the dinner, that said, "I'm sorry for the things I said. I didn't know. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Maybe I will someday. Probably not." Beth sent nothing. Margaret Cho sent me a bottle of scotch, single malt, very good, with a card that said, "Well done." I mean that professionally. I sent her back a fruit basket and then called her and laughed, which I hadn't done in a while, and which felt better than I expected. Tom Reyes found out eventually the personal dimension of the Coastal Consulting file. He came to my office door, stood there for a moment, and then said, "That was the cleanest case I've ever seen documented. For what it's worth." "It's worth something," I said. "Thank you." He nodded and went back to his desk. People ask me sometimes, colleagues, friends, the therapist I started seeing in February, a calm woman named Dr. Rachel Park, who has the useful quality of never looking shocked by anything, whether I regret how I handled it, the dinner, the frame, the audience. I tell them the truth. No, not because I needed them to see it, not because I needed the theater, or the revelation, or the specific look on Daniel's face when he understood that the structure he'd built his entire life on, the expectation that he was the one who mattered, that I was the furniture, that he could take and take and take without consequence, had been quietly, methodically, professionally dismantled by the woman he'd kissed on the cheek that Monday morning and called bad dreams. Not even because Vanessa deserved it, though she did. She sent me a photo from my own bed. She typed 7 words. She wanted me to feel small. I needed it for me. I needed to know that the person in that marriage, quiet, practical, steady, easy to ignore, was real, that she had value, that she had done her work correctly and completely. Not just her professional work, but this, the hardest audit of all. The one where the subject is your own life and you have to look at every transaction clearly, without flinching, and document exactly what is there. She was careless. I wasn't. That's the whole story.